This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
.08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. Time for Ask a Rabbi.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask a Rabbi this rainy, spitty morning. Roads were interesting in the rain.
Our orange grass needs the rain.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not unhappy about the rain. I wasn't too thrilled to ride in it, but I'm not unhappy about the rain. So I know that we need it. I know that we need it a lot. And what I didn't need, though, was, it's an interesting thing. Without as much traffic on the road, there's actually more road dust. And in a downpour, such as we had, the tire engineer comes out in me, the traction on the road is not as high, and the risk of hydroplaning is actually greater on less traveled roads in sudden rain, until the rain gets strong enough to wash off the road, and then
Yeah, that's the oil on the road, right?
Right. The stuff that comes from not having enough traffic out there. Okay.
Okay.
So
no, I get it. You're right.
So
Yeah.
so boom, it starts raining, and it's one of those typical Florida can't see the world for the rain kind of rains. And the good news was that everybody on the road was really good about getting their lights on, except for that one truck. But most people were pretty good about getting their lights on pretty quick and slowing down. And, of course...
now, that's if you know how to turn your lights on.
There is that.
With all of the automatic stuff now, I have to think about that now. It's like, okay.
Well, I think the automatic sees the darkness of the
Usually
rain.
it does. Yeah,
right?
Usually it does.
And I have one of those antique vehicles that doesn't have... Actually, it does have some... has an automatic setting. I just don't have it on.
There you go. Yeah.
So, yeah, because it and I have arguments every once in a while.
Yeah, that's like whatever, cruise control. Carol will not set that.
Now,
I will total control of the car, and that's
I don't use cruise for short journeys, but if I'm going to be traveling for a long period of time, I use it for fatigue control. So, yeah, okay, so a big.
So, how are your classes at IRSC now?
Oh, they are going along fine. We are using, most professors are either using Zoom, which of course has added a lot of security, so it's fine. And the problem was that people were posting the codes just too out there. Right? They were giving away their personal codes. They were giving away all kinds of stuff because the moderators were not knowledgeable in conference security.
Well, and there were stories on the newscast about hackers getting into Zoom.
Well, that's because what was happening was that moderators were posting their moderator codes. They didn't read it. And
read. You have to read?
Yeah.
This gets back to what
don't even get me started. I can't tell you how many times I have posted instructions on Dropboxes. But anyway, quickly before IRSC gets after me, the other thing is Blackboard Collaborate, which is an internal synchronous classroom structure that is within Blackboard itself.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's Blackboard Collaborate, which comes from the LMS, the Learning Management System, that IRSC and Kaiser and a couple of other, many colleges use. Blackboard's a common one. And so that has its own internal security, but you have to get into it through the classroom shell. And people who aren't in college now have no idea that students have, every classroom has a shell, an internet or an in-college or in-university shell. It has a place where students go.
What do you mean by shell?
Okay, it's a place where students go online. It's a part of the college internal learning system site.
Okay.
And students go on there. All my students do. They've got assignments on. Now, not all professors know how to use it because professors who haven't jumped onto technology don't understand how that works. But I've always, as somebody said to me the other day, oh, you've got an older email. Yeah, I've been on the system since the Apples, folks. I remember seeing the old Microsoft, not the little floppies, the eat your dinner plate size floppies, the big ones, the 8.5 inch. Yeah, I guess 8.5 inch, the big ones. Before we went out to the small ones, and then we went to cassettes, and now we're on thumb drives. So storage is getting smaller and smaller and holding more and more. What else is new? Eventually, it'll be really tiny, but and some people have that already. It's part of the reason why microwaves can be smarter and things like that. And but anyway, so you've got this frame, if you will, and it's got the drop boxes, and it's got all kinds of instructions for the student. The syllabus is stacked there. Stuart was talking about wanting to be able to read stuff. Well, a professor has a contract with the students, and it's your syllabus. You put up there what you're going to do, and you can't be more rigorous than your syllabus says you're going to be, or the college is going to pull the rug out from under you if a student challenges it. So all of that stuff is posted in what's called the shell.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay,
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so when a student registers for classes, they go onto the Blackboard, the virtual campus. Even if they're in-class students, they'll go onto this virtual campus, and their class will be listed there. Their grades are posted there. They can check everything, and it's ongoing. Parents know this from their kids in school, that they can go on and check the grades that the teachers have posted. And in my case, I've got learning quizzes up there where students can go and practice until they're ready to take the exam. I've got all my assignments are turned in there. That way I'm not losing any papers on the way out of class. I don't have to carry papers to and from class.
Wow.
I don't have to read typewriting that's poor or handwriting that's worse. It's all submitted online. So the student sits at home, types it up on their computer, their iPad, or whatever they're typing on, and they submit it directly into this shell.
So are your tests in a Dropbox then?
They can be. If they're going to go to the assessment, and all of this is changing right now because, of course, the assessment center's not open due to COVID, and we're using alternative secure testing modalities, and they're looking at different ways to watch the student through their iPads take the test and things like that, so that for the foreseeable future we'll have a way to do that. I think we're going to be virtual in school for a while, except for the things that have to be done in it's really hard to do an appendectomy virtually.
How tough is it to all of a sudden have a student face to face and then all of a sudden not see him for the rest of the semester? I think that would be tough as an instructor.
Well, I do see them because I see them in the Zoom class.
No, I know. Yeah.
Or in the Blackboard Collaborate class, or or wherever it is that we choose to meet, because it's not limited. It's up to the professor to do it. What I haven't done, and I will do next semester, is that I was using Kahoots and something called Kahoot in class, which is a lot of fun. It's a live ding, 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 ding competition, quiz answering kind of thing, and it reinforces what you went over in the lecture. And I was using that, and I've got to figure out, there's a way to configure it into this format because it was set up for online classes as well. So, so there's different kinds of things. There's what's called synchronous and asynchronous classes. Synchronous is where we do what I just said, and then we have a classroom setting, and we're face-to-face, like you and Stuart were, right? It's like Skype, right, but it's not Skype.
Yeah.
And it's a lot less of a hog on the computer, the software. They just have to download the launcher, which will fit on most computers. Older computers, a bigger problem. So, students who are, again, on the low end of the financial scale have a bigger burden. And, I don't have answers for them. Those will work their way out. And hopefully we'll be able to get computers to the folks to the students that need it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Those are real serious issues.
Well, yeah. And I would imagine as we get a little closer to the semester in September that are we looking at online then?
I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
I know for summer A, we're totally online. I'm not scheduled to teach summer B. The semesters are now being broken down into half semesters, A and Bs, for some classes, and summer always has been A and B. It used to be summer 1 and 2, and now it's summer A and B.
Yeah.
And so I'm only scheduled for summer A because I was hoping to go somewhere in summer B. Well,
Have a nice vacation.
yeah, thank you. Well, hopefully.
Travel to New York, maybe?
Yeah, no. And a love to all my family, and I've got family in New York watching, so hi, Ricky. My heart goes out to the folks in that area that are. We've got, all kinds of stuff going on up there. But, yeah, I think we're going to be offering a lot more online, and I'm offering what's called synchronous class, which will be face-to-face, but it'll be online. And so I'll be looking at the students, and fortunately,
That's cool, though.
Yeah, we have that technology, and we're looking at. We've been streaming services, my gosh, for 4 years now, 4 years. We're not that old of a congregation, but we started pretty much. Well, we started the very first high holidays that we ran, which were in tradition in the building that has since been sold, and we did high holidays there. And we streamed those. Somebody wonderful set up a laptop in the corner and streamed the service, and so people could join us who couldn't physically be with us. And that's always been the reason for streaming, which is that there have always been folks that are ill. There are shut-ins who otherwise can't get to a service, and there's lots of things like that. And so this was a way to bring services to those folks who couldn't otherwise be there. And so we looked at that overarching connection and the mitzvah, right? the deed of bringing it to them, and that overarched any of the other things, because we do use microphones, we do use lights, we're electronic inside the service.
Sure.
And this Friday we're going to try an experiment of bringing a cantorial soloist who visits us for the high holidays, and see if she can keep my voice a little closer to on pitch, and it's quite a challenge. As we all like to say in my congregation, I try to use as many keys as possible in every song.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say why is it every priest and rabbi I've ever met cannot sing.
Well,
I mean, this goes all the way back to grade school.
yeah,
Oh.
if you're into rabbiing, right? I'm going to say that worrying about being in Juilliard and being a musician is not your highest priority.
That's true. That's true.
And it's theoretically something else that brings you into it. Now, that having been said, there are some folks that come out of cantorial families, and so they do have great voices. There are some Jewish spiritual leaders that are really cantors and not rabbis.
Oh, we had some cantors when I was at Loyola U that used to come down from Rabbi Magnan's temple. They were off the charts. They were great. They were just great.
Yeah, and some of them have beautiful voices.
Yeah.
And and beautiful voices can be both a plus and a minus in a service. Okay.
Why?
Why? So the good part is that it keeps you on, in a relatively smaller number of keys, which depending on the skill of the rabbi. If somebody's there to carry me, I do a better job. I do a decent job.
You think it takes away from the message, maybe?
It can if it becomes about the music, if it becomes about the musician, if the cantor, let's say, plays a guitar or some other single instrument, then they're going to modify stuff to go to that instrument. And if they modify it to go to that instrument, then it becomes about them. Now, can that be done in a way that serves the community? Yes, it can. But it's a challenge. Is there a challenge in something here? Okay. Anyway, We'll find out what's going on. It's not a phone call. Okay, that's a good piece. All right, so there was this little flurry of activity on the other side of the room. For those who don't know, our studio is set up so that there's a number of people in different places, and we just had a change in producers. Hi, Cliff. So, yeah, we're good. We're good, and life will manage itself. So anyway, to answer Greg's question, if the service becomes about the music, it becomes about the musician, about the instrument, then you are not serving God. And there's actually, we use musical instruments a lot in renewal kinds of services. Renewal is about music. It's about bringing the congregation in, but it's also, and I can remember, I love to drum. I have a drum. It has to not be about the drum. And, and so it's one of the challenges because people want to help with the service. Okay? And so people are wonderful about it, right? So, and we've got young people who like to play the drum, and we've got all kinds of folks who are not necessarily there every week, but when they're there, they want to use we've got 2 big drums and a couple small drums. And if they start to drum, if they're, as Ellie Lester, one of my friends in California, puts it, says if you're the kind of person who's sitting there clicking a pen all the time and you're, clapping on right, you're doing all of that, and the rhythm just is in you. It doesn't mean you're good at the rhythm. Just because you love it doesn't mean you're good at it. And so the object. And I'm also thinking of the words of Akiva, one of the drumming instructors in rabbinical school. And it's all of those folks, right? As Sharon said, it's about participatory versus performance. And that is the point, right? The music is there to serve the service, not the other way around, right? The congregation is not there to provide a platform so that the cantor can go riff and sing what they want to sing on top of this beautiful bed. That works if you've got an orchestra and a choir and you're this jazz type singer and you go riffing on it, and that's beautiful and it's wonderful, but that's a performance. That's not prayer. Prayer is the art of bringing people together to make everyone feel God's presence and the wonder of that presence, and it's a different kind of thing. And so it is one of the challenging balances. It's one of the things that, sometimes people say to me, well, what's renewal about? Renewal is about some interesting pieces. It's about how to do that, how to make the service participatory, how to make people be more included, how to get people to actually think about things, right? Because the service is not there to bring everybody onto doing what the leader wants them to do, other than for them to feel God and be in the presence and be connected. But if you try to manipulate, then you have crossed the line from the big G God to the little g God. And I think that that's a challenge, and renewal fights that challenge with every bit that it can. And so the services that we're taught to lead are ones where, and we've had this happen in our congregation, if somebody has a more orthodox upbringing, then the form is there for them to do their kind of prayer. Do it privately but in community, so that we stay in the same place that they are, so that they're with us even if they're doing a more Hebrew, more traditional kind of prayer out of their traditional prayer book. Our prayer, the way that the service is paced, works for them. And I've actually had people from other traditions come up to me and say, why is it that the service works? And that's why. Because for renewal, we're taught, it's not just about this reform kind. It's not just about this conservative kind. It's not just about Reconstructionist. It's not, it's not about any one of these things. And you're right, Cher. We used to do our service in a circle where we're located right now. We're just a little too small to be in that circle, but we'll get back there. We'll get back to the circle when we get into a larger space again. And that is the important part, right? And yeah. So it's about the community. It's about and one of the things that people have said when they've come into our sanctuary, it's like being in a large living room. Our chairs, we actually made a very conscious decision. We bought chairs like the first week we were a congregation and not just a chavurah. Chavurah is something that gathers, and that's actually how the group started. It started as something that met only on one Saturday and one Sunday a month. And we did, a Havdalah, a special Saturday night deal on the one Saturday that we met, and we did an educational program on Sunday, both with potluck dinners. And that's the group that when our congregation started, said, let's be, when I was no longer at the other congregation in Port St. Lucie, that's the group that said, we don't want to lose you. We don't want you to leave Port St. Lucie. Let's do a congregation. And so we launched, and that very first thing that we did was to buy 40 large chairs, cushiony, comfortable. Most congregational church/synagogue chairs are 18 inches. Ours are 21. We got the extra wide, and and it wasn't because of social distancing. It was about, we looked at it and we said, someday we're going to be in this gorgeous, wonderful, beautiful sanctuary. We know that's years away, but when that day comes, we'll bring these chairs with us. And if we do the extra wide chairs, we'll lose 2 or 3 chairs a row, but we'll gain so much more in comfort and in people not feeling like they're sitting in each other's laps. And we didn't get the locking kind so that you can't go lockstep, because that, again, that diminishes the sense of participation if you've got locked chairs, if you've got straight lines. So our chairs are curved. They're curved into a semicircle, even in our tiny space. So those are things that we do very consciously to increase participation. Does that get out of hand? Oh, yes, sometimes it does. And sometimes people think the service is about them in the pews, and then we gently try to bring it back to everyone. But that's the skill of the leader, to be able to do some of that, hopefully without totally trouncing the ego.
I've had a little, a perception of the Tabernacle of David as a very musical place.
Oh, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
So
the ancient temple, what it was, if you read Psalm 150, right, it talks, and I have great fun with it, because in the Psalm, it talks about the shofar. And so I'll take the shofar that we have in the synagogue and I'll hold it up and wave it. And then it'll talk about the stringed instruments. And so I'll make like I'm playing a guitar or a lyre or whatever, some stringed instrument. Or if there's one in the room that somebody's playing, I'll point to it. And right, the piano is a version of that. And then it'll talk about the drum. And so, I'll make like I'm drumming or point to the drums or whatever, or hoist a drum if I am playing one, and the cymbals, right? So, right, because all of those instruments were part of it. The priests would open the temple with 15 psalms of ascent. Now, you're talking about a vision. I have this vision because there were 15 steps that led up to the temple courtyard so that you could come into it, and it would open in the morning. And my vision of this is that the Levites were the musicians, that they would line up on these stairs, and on each psalm, they would move up one stair, and then after the 15, they would disperse and let the people in. And I imagine that was something, people gathered to see. I have no idea if that's right or not. That's just, like you, it's a vision in my mind. It's a way of trying to think of what that must have been like, but music was definitely it. So why is music not as much a part? That's actually a political thing. Right.
Well, there are some Christian sects that don't use musical instruments, like the Byzantine.
There's all kinds of. When the temple was destroyed, okay, which happened by Rome in between 60 and 70, totally burned by 70, and there were a couple of things going on, right? The Romans had so totally corrupted the priesthood anyway, and that's not hard. They did it they appointed the high priest, and they did all kinds of crazy stuff, and that was their style. It's one of the things that they did, and it's not like the people said, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea." It's like you either did it or you were trashed. Right. Oh, great. And my thing is trying to reconnect. So something's going on with the internet. Is that the?
We're suspecting that. The reason why we had to change engineers real quick is there's a report that the transmitter is a little low. So I've got us on a full blast operation to get the word out here.
All right. So for the folks that lost us on Facebook, we'll find out what's going on. Has been paused. Move to a better signal, or you can end the broadcast. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. Let me see if the phone can pick it up.
You might be able to regain that.
Yeah, it'll do what it'll do. And here we go. Okay, we're back. So for those who were on Facebook with us, my apologies. We had an intermittent bad signal there, and hopefully we're back with it now. So as I started to say, so when the temple was destroyed, things were pretty corrupt. Rome was pretty, it was kind of like the Borg. You were going to be assimilated whether you want to or not. In fact, that was part of the problem in Judea. The Judeans didn't want to be assimilated, regardless of what was going on with Herod and that whole mess. And so there was a lot of resistance to it. But when the temple is destroyed, the rabbis, who are running around as teachers, look around and go, yeah, no, we're not going to have music, because if we go to the music, then the Kohanim, the priests, and the Levites retain control of what's happening. And if they retain control, that really keeps things Roman. And so in an effort to move it away from that structure, we start what's now called Rabbinic Judaism. There were many different ways to practice Judaism at the time. And the rabbis win that battle for a number of reasons. And so it becomes Rabbinic Judaism. And the rabbis say, oh, it's sad and it's tragic that we don't have the temple. And because we don't have the temple, we can't have music. Especially not on Shabbat, which is the time when, of course, most people do want to have something to do with services, with God connection and what have you, because they're not working. And so you take the music out of it, and with that you take the Levites out. It's a political thing. And that has come down to, oh, you can't do it because it's Shabbat. And sometimes, so Shlomo Carlebach played a guitar. And the argument was, well, you can't tune it, and what if a string breaks? And he says, if it does, that's God's will. And
keep playing.
You keep playing. We'll work around it. And, it's not a big deal. And so, so he had to stand there. He didn't carry the guitar to or from. And it's, so the important part is, what's the instruction about? It's kind of like when I talk about toilet paper. The instruction to not tear toilet paper on Shabbat forces you to make sure you've got enough to get through the weekend. Because if you've got to pre-tear it, then on Thursday you start tearing it so that you have it. And if you don't have enough, you run to the market and get one. God willing, it's not a COVID and you can find toilet paper. But, right, you're not hoarding it.
It's not being hoarded.
It's not being hoarded. Right, so that's not so much about don't tear as it is about do the preparation, get everything ready. When when I was growing up, the whole week was aimed at how do we make it so that we don't need to do any work on Shabbat. It's not about don't and can't. It's about how do you structure your life in a way so that everybody.
The preparation, yeah.
It's all about preparation, right? So meals are prepared ahead so that you're not having to cook. And the idea is that everybody can sit and enjoy Shabbat. The root of the word for Shabbat is to sit, to stop, to pause, to take that little bit of...
Well, we make preparations for vacations.
We do.
We
do
preparations
a lot
for
of
everything.
And you work really hard to have that vacation, and you sometimes work really hard afterward trying to get caught up.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's what that's designed to be a once a week, a 1-day siesta. And when you really get into that rhythm, it is extremely healthy. It's extremely powerful, and we're pausing again, so we'll deal with it. And so, it's designed to do that for us so that we can sit back, we can reflect on the week, we can make rudder adjustments, we can make course adjustments in our life, in our community's lives, and in the lives of each other. And we can help each other. And we can connect and do all these things. We can be a part of a bigger thing by taking this time for Shabbat to sit back and just be there. In fact, I've always wanted to say that I wanted to write a book, call it "It's Shabbat, Get to Work," because there is work to be done, but it's not the day-to-day raising funds so that you can function. It's the functioning, right? It's the functioning. It's the use what you've got, use what you learned, and use it to elevate and to move forward and to plan and to, not to execute, but to plan. And if we take this reflective time, if we take this time of sitting back and looking at what we've done and at the world and, how can we move it to the next level of holiness, then we could have a really wonderful world. And as people like to point out, different religions have different days. So Jews, are active and I did that when I was a chaplain. I always signed up for Sundays so that my Christian friends could be off. Sign up on Fridays so that the Muslims can go to their Jummah. Let's take care of each other so that each of us can approach the one creator God who created this one universe. Everybody has their time and their place to do it, and people are not having to feel so super stressed. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we could do that for each other, right?
We hunger and thirst after drama, though, don't we?
We do, and if ever there was an example of that, this current situation
absolutely
plays on that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I'll flip gears and I'll talk about it for a moment. We're not going to know the reality of what's happening and what the numbers are and a whole lot of stuff ever, probably, but certainly not for a while. And I know that anecdotally, I've listened to people and, some of the deaths that are being attributed to the virus are not the virus. Right. There was a case of a mother and child who passed. The mother did have COVID and perhaps passed from the complications of it. But her child suffocated because she fell on the child when she fell down. And the child suffocated. But they marked the kid as a COVID death.
Oh, my.
So, was it caused by COVID? Kind of, sort of, but not really, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of that, I believe, in New York. And then the CDC had to reevaluate everything.
Yeah. And it's going to be a long time until they really get to the root of it, because a lot of these cases are just anecdotally recorded. On the other side of it, not everybody who will have passed because of a complication from it got into the system and got tested and checked out. So we don't know the real numbers. We, of course, have no idea what the real, we know what those who've been tested, who tested positive is. Of course, we don't know how accurate those tests are. Right. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. And, why is it that we have allowed manufacturers to not be rigorous within their systems to check validity and reliability? Those are things that everybody who manufactures any instrument to measure something is keenly aware of. And to pretend that, no, I'm sorry, you did know. Either you did know or you should have known, because it's not responsible to issue a product without testing it. But will there always be business people who cheat, lie, and steal? Of course, right? Because there will always be people who do lie, cheating, and stealing, and if they're in charge of a business, they're going to lie, cheat, and steal there as well. And even if you're an honest business person and you hire a liar, cheater, stealer, they'll lie, cheat, and steal to you to look good in the company and put out bad product for you. So there's a lot of levels of it. And, yes, we should trust everybody and we should check. As my boss at Goodyear
Trust
used
and
to say.
verify.
Trust and verify. That was what my boss at Goodyear always said to me. I trust you and I will verify. So that when somebody asks me, I can say I verified.
I think Ronald Reagan or George W. Bush would say that every once in a while.
Yeah.
Trust with verification.
Trust with verification. It's important. It really is important. And so I do have a caller. Thank you for calling in. And who do I have
Kendall.
here? I have Kendall in Fort Pierce. Thank you for calling, Kendall.
Thank you for having me. I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Is there a proper blessing for the Tsar?
Is there a blessing for the Tsar? Yes. God bless and keep the Tsar far away from us. Same blessing for the Corona, right?
You did get that reference. Very
I
good.
did get that reference, yes. And
Well, you know, all this solemn stuff, I just want to try to break the ice a little bit.
there you go. We appreciate that. You always need something to do that, to keep it a little bit light, because things can get too serious. You're absolutely right.
Right. Well, you know, during this downtime, I've been trying to learn how to play a Jewish instrument.
Ah, okay. So what Jewish instrument have you been trying to learn to play, Kendall?
Oh, it's the ram's horn, and so far, so good.
Shofar, so good. Okay.
Good play with words.
Yes, I had a bar mitzvah student say that in the middle of his celebration one Friday night. Shofar, so good. So the Rams.
Anyway, have a good show. You're doing well.
Thank you very much, Kendall. Thank you for calling in, and I love it. Okay. Need a little bit of levity to lighten the mood, and it does. It breaks the ice, and yeah, we can get far too serious. We can take ourselves too seriously sometimes. But I think that, you know, the story on COVID, and I'm amused at the people who are saying, oh, you know, X number over X number positive, and that's the death rate. No, because we don't know those numbers yet.
Everybody's not a master mathematician.
Well, you know, whether you're a master mathematician or not, you know, yes, anybody can take a number and divide it by another number and get a percentage. You know, your phone can do that for you. The problem is that neither the numerator nor the denominator are valid numbers at this point. And so it's like throwing Jell-O on the wall and saying, yeah, that's what it is. You know, but you need to report it as Jell-O, not
stucco.
Yeah, not stucco. Whether it's stuck on the wall or not. And so, you know, there's this tendency to want to somehow, if we think that if we can have the numbers that we have some control on this, that's an illusion. All we're doing is playing catch up and not with tomatoes. Yeah, I'm sorry. You know, we really are. It's you know, it's unfortunate. It's many things. But we don't really have the full picture of what's going on. We don't have all of the images. We know that what we're doing right now is stressing the system. We're going to have new normals. We're going to, you know, as I think Stuart pointed that out in his show, and there was the announcement last night of waves of release. It's not going to all happen at once. I think we're going to see a lot more wearing of masks. You know, and what comes to my mind is, you know, this image of China and Japan that have a habit of, you know, you wear masks, particularly during infectious seasons, or if you yourself are not feeling well. For them, it's a matter of courtesy. If you don't wear a mask when you go out and you're not feeling well, or you're coughing or sputtering or whatever, you're rude. You're rude. Yeah. It's a different culture. And, you know, the other thing I look at is the Asian bowing rather than shaking hands.
There you go. Now, there's
right?
a thought.
So, you know, and if we look at history, there have been many, many plagues throughout history. This is not new, folks. This isn't even new in my lifetime. Right? Now, I'm young enough that, you know, polio was before me, the Spanish flu was before me. Typhoid before me. Lots of those things were out there, but I've lived through the bird flu, the swine flu, the SARS, the salmonella outbreaks, the this is the that's, the Zika. Right? You know, it wasn't that long ago, Zika, and I had to comfort some people who were coming into Florida for high holidays, and I was like, well, I might catch Zika and take it back and give it to my my sister, my daughter who's pregnant. and they're going to have birth defects. And, and I can't risk that. And I understand some of that. And the key here is, how do you keep things that are reasonable numbers, and, when does it become a phobia? And those numbers and those situations, you've got to manage them is the best thing I can say. But this is not the first time that we've had something that is terrifying, nor will it be the last. And there are indications that there have been plagues and catastrophes like this in ancient times, hundreds of years before the Common Era, right? So 3,000 years ago or so. There are mass graves that appear to be caused by plague or some kind of a thing like that. And a lot of those go up and down the Silk Road. Whoops, you just turned me off.
Oh, I see.
There we go. Yeah.
We're not off. We're only off in our headphones when I do that.
Okay, there you go. So, so there's some of these. And somebody the other day sent me a thing about Nostradamus predicting these things. And that's not either, because the years had to be tweaked to try to force it into a Nostradamus kind of. People like to retrofit stuff all the time. And so Russ has called with a comment. Okay, Russ, what's your comment? Thank you for calling.
Russ, you're
Hello?
on the air.
Yeah, I was just thinking, wouldn't the truest way to determine whether this is a pandemic or not is to compare it to last year's deaths during the same period of time?
The question is whether or not we can decide if this is a pandemic to compare it to last year. It depends. I mean, this is a new virus, so it didn't have any deaths.
I don't know if you guys hear me, but I can't. There's absolutely nothing going on.
We hear you well.
We hear you very well. Can you hear me back on the call? You hung up. Okay, so Russ asked, if we can, how do we tell if it's a pandemic? Can we use the numbers of last year compared to this year? And the challenge with that is that, this virus has only been loose since sometime perhaps November, certainly starting to come out in December, but it doesn't really hit full bloom until January. China doesn't shut down until January. And now, granted, they have a tremendous energy against shutting down because it's the Chinese New Year in January. They don't celebrate New Year at December 31st, January 1st, because they're not on the solar calendar like we are. They're on the Chinese lunar calendar.
But it's amazingly close, isn't it?
Well, it jiggles, right? It'll go January, February. This year it happened to have been pretty close. Chinese New Year was the 25th of January. I only know that because I work with Chinese students, and so being aware of their situation. And for them, that's a major holiday. It is the largest human migration. They go and they visit family. People are off from work 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on how and where they work and what kind of work they do. And they travel. A lot of my students' families were actually out of the country, out of China, when the shutdown came into China. And so they had to come in to the country and respond to it. It's a time when they have great fairs. It's the big business time for Disney and those folks, and they ended up shutting down. So for China to pull the plug, it would be like trying to pull the plug here December 15th. Just would have been really, if we think it's hard to get people to not congregate over Easter, try doing that over Christmas. It would be much harder. And that's just a recognition of what it is. So when does it become a pandemic? Well, the World Health Organization and the CDC have definitions, and flu was actually right on the edge of pandemic when COVID started to make its way around. And, that means that 20 to 40,000 people in the U.S. will have died from flu. But flu is so commonplace, so ho-hum, it kills people every year, thousands of people every year. And it's like people don't care. That's the real tragedy. It was 0.1 away from being declared a pandemic for the flu when COVID hit. And so, what we don't know and won't know for a while, how many people have the flu and COVID? Right? That could be a double whammy. Which one do you blame for the death? If you count it for both, well, there's not a really good answer there. What caused it? Did getting COVID, was that the straw that broke the camel's back, or was that person going to be compromised by flu anyway? Those are questions I don't know that we have the answers for. And boy, there's still a lot of information that needs to come in. Does that make COVID any less serious? No. But COVID is attracting a lot of attention, partially because it is quote unquote new and novel. Coronas are not new, folks. It's the common cold is a corona. And we're coming up close on our 5-minute time. But, so we've kind of like talked about a whole lot of things today, which is not uncommon. And, I think that we're going to have to be a little more mindful, a little more conscious of health. And, you have to wonder if some of the veils in the world and the bowing is not to limit transmission of other communicable diseases, things that come down from ancient times when we didn't have wonder drugs, we didn't have intubators, we didn't have, all of the equipment and things, and people just basically went home and they either got well or they didn't. And, yes, so we won't know the numbers. We really won't know the numbers for a while.
Do you think people, for the most part, are doing what we need to do to stay safe and healthy during this time?
Somewhat.
Somewhat.
I think there's people who have no idea. They think they're doing the right thing. The example that I think of was that I was out at a restaurant in the very beginning of this, and I watched a woman come in, and she was wearing a face mask, and she was wearing gloves. But she was touching everything with her gloves. So, so even if you wear the gloves, you can still cross-contaminate. You wear the mask, you still can pick it up, and if you're not careful taking that mask off, I've shown that sometimes, right? So here's a mask, and I need to take it off in a way that doesn't touch my body, because if the virus is on my mask and I touch it and then I touch my eyes, the mask has done me harm.
Right.
And the same thing with your gloves. If you don't, we're doing a lot of damage with the gloves right now. When I go to the market, the number of gloves that I see on the floor, on the parking lot, that's scary. Yeah. That's going to hurt animals, and if they're infected, then they're putting the infection all over where animals can pick them up. And we know this virus has already jumped species. It can jump again. It's gone from, bats are mammals. Mm-hmm. And, some people say, well, and I'm going to put it out there. Folks, China has had the worst financial quarter they've had in decades. I sincerely can't picture anybody intentionally hurting themselves to that level. Could this have been an accident that comes out? Yes, there is a research lab in Wuhan. That research is because there's a bat population in Wuhan. Yeah. That's where you put the research lab, folks, where the folks who have the virus live. And it's not people, it's bats. Yeah.
The bat flu.
Well,
we're calling it COVID-19, but is not calling it bat flu maybe giving a wrong message out?
Well, no. All viruses are little chunks of living stuff that attack human beings, or that attack animals, right? So we had the bird flu, we had the swine flu, we had the Spanish flu didn't start in Spain. It started in probably in France. Wow. No, I don't think we should call it the bat flu, because then I think the bats are going to get a bad rap out of it.
Yeah, that's right. They get a bad reputation when they've already got a bad reputation.
They've already got
vampire bats.
Right, vampire. One species drinks blood, and so they all become bloodsuckers.
And they're not even. I don't think they're in China.
No, but bats are all over the world, and they migrate all over, and they're actually really helpful, folks. They eat the insects that affect our food source. So we want bats. Bats are good. Bats are nice. Yes, they look funny and they can scare you. And if they get caught in your hair, it's not fun. But there's a ton of them that live in the trees here in Florida. I've watched them fly. Come out around sunset when it's a little bit dusky. If you're in an area that has some of the abandoned orchards, you will see them leaving the trees. If you're near caves, they like caves. You'll see them coming out of a cave. It's,
I used to see 2 bats flying around my yard just about sundown, and then in the mid-spring, all of a sudden, there were 5 flying around. They were showing me their babies.
Yeah, and they're good for us. They eat those things that cause Zika.
The mosquitoes.
The mosquitoes, yeah, and other things that we'd really rather not have.
Okay.
So they are under tremendous stress, though, because of the climate change that's going on right now. They're migrating at the wrong time of the year, and their food is migrating at different times. This was a system that evolved over millennia, that the food and the bats would be together, and we've shifted that. And so the music is coming on to tell me that it is time for me to say thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of Ask a Rabbi. I will be back next week, God willing, at 11:05 on WPSL WSTU Digital 1590. Thank you for being here. It's Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz Chaim.
Today's show can be watched in a few minutes from now. It'll be up there on Facebook because that'll finish that broadcast. And then, after we're done with it, we'll have it up on YouTube. Ask a Rabbi archives are on WPSLTV.com. That's our YouTube.
Thank you.